Good evening, and welcome to your myth time. Tonight, you will become Pandora woman who has been misunderstood for millennia. In this story, you are not the source of evil, but an ordinary person played by fate and misunderstood by the world. You will experience the weight of carrying others' expectations, feel the pain of bearing responsibilities that don't belong to you, and in this process, find your own truth and strength. Let us return to that distant era, back to your perspective as Pandora, to re-examine this mistold story. The moment you opened your eyes, the world was golden. You stood on the clouds of Mount Olympus, surrounded by gods, each wearing satisfied smiles on their faces. You felt your body light and beautiful, skin smooth as ivory, hair shining like gold. But beneath this perfect exterior, you felt an indescribable emptiness. She is truly perfect. Aphrodite caressed your cheek. Beauty beyond compare. Wisdom too is not lacking, Athena nodded approvingly. Enough to handle everything in the mortal world. You wanted to speak, but found you didn't know what to say. Who were you? Why were you here? These questions churned in your mind, but the gods seemed unconcerned with your confusion. Zeus approached you, his eyes flickering with a light you couldn't understand. Pandora, he said, you will become a gift to humanity. A gift? You repeated the word in your mind. You weren't a person, but a thing to be given? This realization filled you with inexplicable unease. You wanted to ask why, wanted to ask about the meaning of your existence, but the words on your lips became obedient nodding. Remember, Zeus's voice became serious. You have a mission. Mission. Another word that confused you. You were created not to live for yourself, but to fulfill someone else's mission. This feeling was like modern people facing parental expectations and societal demands. You hadn't had a chance to understand yourself before being assigned responsibilities that weren't your choice. You were brought to the mortal world and married to Epimetheus. He was a kind man, full of love and curiosity toward you. But even in his gentle embrace, you felt a deep loneliness. You didn't know what you truly wanted, didn't know who you were beyond beauty and wisdom. What are you always thinking about? Epimetheus would sometimes ask you. You wanted to tell him you were thinking about the meaning of your existence, about why everyone had expectations of you, but no one asked what you wanted. But you just smiled and shook your head. Nothing special. In the deep of night, you often stood by the window, looking at the stars, feeling the emptiness deep in your heart. You had everything the gods had given you, yet felt you were nothing. This feeling was like those in modern society who are shaped into perfect women, outwardly glamorous, but inwardly not knowing who they really are. The box appeared in your life in the 3rd month. Epimetheus returned from outside. his expression grave as he carried a beautiful box. The box was made of gold, carved with intricate patterns, emanating a mysterious glow. "What is this?" you asked. "A gift from Zeus." Epimetheus carefully placed the box in the corner. He said, "It's a gift for us, but it must never be opened." "Must never be opened?" You stared at the box, feeling an unprecedented emotion rise in your heart. It was curiosity, the first truly your own emotion in your life. In the following days, the box attracted your attention like a magnet. You would steal glances at it while cooking, think about it while weaving, and even dream about it at night. You began to wonder, why couldn't it be opened? What was inside? "Don't you find it strange?" you asked Epimetheus one evening. "Why give us a gift that can't be opened?" Epimetheus shook his head. "The thoughts of gods are not for us to understand. We just need to obey." Obey. That word again. Your entire existence seemed to be about obeying. Obeying the God's will, obeying your husband's expectations, obeying society's norms. But the box awakened something deep within you, something that was your own desire. You began secretly approaching the box, at first just looking from afar, then daring to come closer, finally even daring to reach out and touch its surface. The box was warm, as if there was life beating inside. Each touch brought a strange resonance. It wasn't fear, but an intense curiosity and longing. You wanted to know the truth, to understand the hidden secrets. This feeling made you feel like an independent individual for the first time, not just the perfect wife in others' expectations. "I just want to look." But you knew this wasn't just curiosity. This was your first impulse to make a choice for yourself. Your first desire to go against others' expectations. In that era, women were expected to be obedient and quiet. Just as in modern society, women are often expected to sacrifice their curiosity and ambition. You began to question, why can't I have my own choices? Why is my curiosity seen as dangerous? Why must I always be a perfect, obedient being? At night, lying in bed, listening to Epimetheus's steady breathing, an unprecedented loneliness rose in your heart. You loved him, but you realized that even the closest person couldn't understand your inner struggle. You were created to be the perfect wife, but you longed to be a complete person. That morning that would change everything, sunlight streamed through the window onto the box, making it look even more enticing. Epimetheus left to work in the fields, leaving only you and the box in the house. You stood before it, your heart engaged in fierce battle. "I shouldn't," you told yourself. "I'm a good wife. I should be obedient." But another voice spoke in your heart. "Why? Why can't you have your own choice? Why is your curiosity wrong?" You remembered the day you were created, remembered the God's satisfied smiles, remembered that light in Zeus's eyes you couldn't understand. Suddenly, a terrible thought entered your mind. What if all of this was planned? What if your curiosity was also designed? This thought filled you with fear, but also made you angrier. You began to recall your brief life, being created, being given a mission, being married to Epimetheus, being expected to be the perfect wife. In all of this, which thing was your own choice? I want one real choice, you whispered, even if just once. You reached out, touching the box's clasp. Your hand was trembling, not from fear, but from excitement. This was the first time you felt truly alive. The first time you felt you were more than just a product of others' expectations. You thought of modern women expected to be perfect, expected to balance career and family perfectly, expected to always be gentle and considerate, expected to sacrifice their dreams to meet others' needs. You realized your struggle wasn't lonely. In any era, people face the same dilemma. If I open it, what will happen? You asked yourself. You knew there might be consequences, but you also knew that if you didn't do this, you would never know who you were. You would forever live in others' expectations, never knowing your true power and choice. You closed your eyes and took a deep breath. In that moment, you made the first, truly your own decision of your life. I want to live for myself once, you said. Your finger touched the clasp, feeling its slight warmth. You knew that once opened, there would be no going back. But you also knew that if you didn't open it, you would never know what your true self looked like. In this moment, you were no longer the perfect gift created by the gods, no longer Epimetheus's perfect wife. You were yourself, Pandora, a woman with her own curiosity and right to choose. The clasp opened easily under your touch. The box's lid slowly rose, and you held your breath, prepared to face the unknown. But what you saw wasn't the treasure or secrets you had imagined, but wisps of black mist. The mist poured from the box, swirled in the air, then dispersed. You felt a strange relief, as if some burden had been lifted from your shoulders. But immediately, you heard sounds from the distance, crying, arguing, painful moaning. No, you whispered, this can't be. But reality unfolded mercilessly before you. You realized the box didn't contain gifts, but human suffering, disease, poverty, war, jealousy, hatred, and you had just released them all into the world. You collapsed to the ground, staring at the empty box. At the bottom of the box, you saw a small point of light that was hope. But at this moment, even hope couldn't ease the shock and fear in your heart. What have I done? You trembled. What have I done? Just then, Epimetheus returned. He saw the opened box, saw your desperate expression, and immediately understood what had happened. Pandora! He rushed to you. Why did you open it? You looked at the shock and disappointment in his eyes, feeling your heart break. I was just curious. I wanted to know what was inside. Curious? Epimetheus's voice carried anger you'd never heard before. Because of curiosity, you destroyed the entire world? You wanted to explain, to tell him about your inner struggle, to say you just wanted one choice of your own. But facing his accusation, facing the sounds of pain from the distance, you found yourself speechless. Soon, the news spread. People learned that you had opened the box, that you had released the world's suffering. They came to your door, accusing you, cursing you. It's all her fault. If not for her, we'd still be living in the golden age. She ruined everything. You stood behind the window, listening to these accusations, feeling unprecedented loneliness. No one asked why you opened the box. No one cared about your feelings. No one wanted to know your story. You were just a convenient scapegoat, a target who could bear all responsibility. But deep in your heart, a voice whispered. You realized you had been designed as the perfect scapegoat. The gods needed a reason to explain human suffering, and you were that reason. Years passed, and you learned to endure. You endured the world's accusations, endured your husband's coldness, endured inner loneliness. But in this process, you were also growing. You began to understand that true strength doesn't come from perfection, but from bearing responsibility. You began helping those who suffered. When disease came, you learned to heal. When famine arrived, you shared your food. When people despaired, you gave them hope. Why help us? A sick child asked you. Everyone says you brought these sufferings. You gently stroked the child's head. Because I understand pain. I know what it feels like to be misunderstood. Gradually, you discovered a secret. The hope that remained at the bottom of the box had always been in your heart. You realized you weren't just the releaser of suffering, but also the guardian of hope. You began to understand that perhaps opening the box wasn't a mistake. Perhaps humans needed to experience suffering to grow, needed to face darkness to cherish light. And you weren't the source of evil, but the catalyst for growth. I don't regret it, you said to the stars one quiet night. I don't regret choosing curiosity, don't regret choosing truth. Even if I must bear all the accusations, I don't regret becoming my true self. You thought of those misunderstood in modern society, women who dare to question, people who refuse perfect labels, souls who choose authenticity over compliance. You knew you were not alone. When night fully fell and the world returned to quiet, you sat beside the box that once held suffering. The box was now empty, but your heart was full. You had learned an important truth. The real mistake isn't having curiosity, isn't making choices, but abandoning your authenticity. You were created to be a scapegoat, but you chose to become the guardian of hope. You closed your eyes, feeling the peace within. You knew that tomorrow people would still accuse you, still say everything was your fault, but you also knew you no longer needed others' approval to define yourself. You are Pandora, not a perfect gift, not an obedient wife, but a woman who dares to be curious, dares to choose, dares to take responsibility. Your story isn't about mistakes, but about courage. On this quiet night, let this story accompany you into dreams. Remember, curiosity isn't sin, choice isn't wrong, and being your authentic self never requires apology. May you find your own strength in dreams. May you remember when you wake that you don't need to bear burdens of responsibilities that aren't yours. Good night. May your dreams be as beautiful as hope.